Sophie Hardy and the Battle of the Myriad by M.R. Dale. Narrated by Leona Hall. Epilogue 2. The Betterment begins. Walking down the street in the middle of England, as the clock ticked towards midnight, was a man, Kevin. Kevin had lived an ordinary, mundane life, achieved nothing special, didn't stand out at parties, and had often dreamt of what he could do if he actually put his mind to it. Unfortunately, Kevin had always found excuses as to why he couldn't get around to doing what he dreamt of. He saw it as life just getting in the way, whereas, if he was completely honest with himself, he was lazy, and he had just got comfortable in his boring life. He was currently thinking how good it would have been if he'd have trained to be a doctor, someone that changed lives and saved lives of not just patients, but the families of patients. That would have been amazing. But now he was going to struggle because it had just been revealed on the news that mythical creatures had returned, and he would have to contend with that in life. There simply wasn't the time for going to medical school. It wasn't Kevin's fault. There was just always something stopping him, he kept telling himself. Mythical creatures, and I'm too old anyway, Kevin thought to himself. Nobody goes to medical school at 36. I'd be laughed at. No, I will just carry on as I am. That's the safe thing to do. On top of that, he wouldn't be able to afford to go to medical school. That was another obstacle. He had been making monthly payments to his ex-wife for their daughter, who he hadn't seen since she was tiny, and that took up lots of his time. And his new family, being stepdad to someone else's children, had also taken its toll, especially when they turned 11 in the blink of an eye. When would I find the time? Kevin continued to think of reasons why he couldn't fulfil the dream that had been nagging at the back of his mind for about 15 years. The excuses made it so much easier to not feel guilty as life passed him by. What shall I watch on television tonight? Kevin then thought to himself. That would be much easier than thinking about going to be a doctor. That's far too complicated, and I'd need to work for that. Let me just check my implant again. As Kevin turned down the dark alley that would lead him to the back of his house, he stopped, as in front of him had appeared a man. The alley was narrow and only allowed for one person to fit down it at once. Thus, Kevin waited for the man to come past him before venturing down the passageway. Being from a group of small villages, Kevin assumed he would know who the person was, but the dark night had begun to set in now that it was the end of October, and no light was catching the man's face. Kevin waited as the man slowly stepped forward and stood near a light that emanated from someone's living room in a house the other side of the fence in the alleyway. As the light gradually made its way onto the man's face, Kevin was shocked to see that staring back at him was himself. Red hair that was beginning to thin, stubble that was a few days old, even his clothes matched. "Kevin," the man said confidently. "Yes?" Kevin replied, very sheepishly. "Explain your existence," the copy of Kevin demanded. "Pardon?" Kevin asked, beginning to step back through fear of the unknown. "Explain to yourself what you, Kevin, have achieved at life, and why you do not need to be exalted in your existence." The copy began to walk towards him, while Kevin continued to move backwards away from it. I don't know what you mean," Kevin murmured. "Do you deserve your life?" The copy of Kevin was getting cross. "Convince yourself that you have achieved and lived life to its fullest, or I will be forced to enhance you." I don't know what I've done," Kevin began to sniffle. I've always wanted to be a doctor." "And have you achieved it?" the copy demanded. "No, I'm just too busy," Kevin complained, as he had done in his own head 1,000 times. "Busy with what? Your daughter, Catherine? How do you—" Kevin started, now more confused than scared at the mention of his daughter's name, even if he hadn't seen her for years. "You, Kevin, have been chosen for illumination. You may thank Miss Condenar when you have achieved to your full potential." Kevin could go back no further and fell over a small garden wall. The copy of Kevin came towards him and began to transform. The Kevin appearance disappeared and was replaced by pale white skin which bordered on being grey. Long dark hair fell down the bare chest of the creature, and veins of sheer green pulsated out of its body. I know what you are! You're a Nyx!" Kevin shouted, as the creature leant forward towards him as Kevin struggled to stand up and break free, but the Nyx held him down. The next thing Kevin knew, he was stood up exactly where he had been before, at the end of the alley about to walk up it. Kevin tried to remember what had just happened, but he couldn't. It was like one of those dreams that you are completely engrossed in, but then forget the second you wake up. Kevin shook his head and began to walk towards home again, now almost oblivious to anything that had happened before. As he walked, He felt compelled to open his implant and check out courses at universities for medicine which might take on older applicants. He clicked on one which took his fancy, at a university that would allow him to study from home, except when he needed to be in the hospital on placement. It was fascinating. Why have I never done anything about this? He thought to himself as he rounded the corner onto his driveway. I really should get in contact with Catherine as well. I wonder how she's doing. I haven't seen her for ages. The thought of what Kevin was going to watch on the television had faded completely. This was much more exciting, making something of himself. Walking the opposite way away from Kevin, the nicks that had faced him and become him radioed a message in using the implant it had had implanted. Test number 2 successful, miss. At the other end of the radio message, the recipients thanked the nicks for his service and explained that they would be in touch soon. In a large chair in the centre of the room, a lady stood up. She had a long, flowing black dress, impeccable makeup, and not a bright white hair on her head was out of place, even though it nearly reached the floor. There you go, as you wished. Your father has become one of the first human subjects on Earth to be enhanced, just as we tried to do with your mother. Do you see what good I can do for this world? The woman said. A short, 10-year-old girl with red hair like her dad's turned around to address her. Thank you, Miss Condenar, and I can already see that it is making a huge difference to him. If he had been like this always, then he might not have left my mother and I. You're welcome, Katie. Now, you can get back to studying. Katie bowed to Condenar and left the room calmly. Katie, Condenar said, bringing Katie to a stop just short of the mechanical sliding door that was about to open in front of her. Do you want to hear about how we can help everyone on Earth? Katie turned back around and walked towards Condenar again. Of course, miss. I know that with my friend's help, it can be done even quicker through their technology. Condenar addressed the only other person in the room, a man with a sharp suit and a thoughtful look on his face. What do you think, Mr. Ariti? Do you think your daughter and her friends, Sophie and Clara, would be willing to help with this? Yasmin's dad, Nicholas, turned to face Condenar and nodded. As I guessed when I first saw this a few weeks ago, and through testing it on my wife, I can see that this will improve humanity dramatically. But you say that my daughter will not face an upgrade. Correct. The agents of Scope will face no such vindication. They have already proven their worth in their actions, and through the opinion of your daughter, but they will help me to enhance humanity on a global scale if that's what it takes. This planet owes me that huge debt. All they have to do is keep proving that they are doing their best to better this planet, so I don't need to step in. Condenar tapped some buttons on a control panel in front of her, and what had previously been a huge grey wall that Mr. Ariti seemed to be staring at became a window. Katie, Nicholas and Condenar all looked out on Earth in all its glory and plotted how they were going to enhance humanity to make the most of living on Earth. The Sophie Hardy saga was written and produced by M.R. Dale and narrated and produced by Leona Hall. If you enjoyed it and would like to continue to follow the adventures of Sophie and her friends in coming episodes, then please subscribe through one of the many podcast providers out there. The links for each of these can be found on our website. If you require more information, visit our many social media channels, or if you would like to purchase a copy of the book, then be sure to check out our website, www.sophiehardysaga.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy.